Let me tell you why you're here.
I've seen things.
Oh my god.
Whoa, yeah! You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Guaranteed to jack you up.
Yo, what is going on, my dudes? It's your host, LamarStaysWeird, coming at you out of sight, out of mind once again. Now, this is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I grew up watching this movie, and it is so much fun, man. And it's also unbelievable because of the cast that is in this. There's so many people I swear I just didn't remember until I got older and rewatched it and recognized a lot of these people from a bunch of different movies. I'll start going by them once we get the ball rolling and I start naming out some characters. That way you guys kind of keep up with who I'm talking about. But today's movie is going to be The Faculty. It's a movie from 1998 that was directed by Robert Rodriguez. I mainly know him from doing the fucking Spy Kids movies. So if you guys remember that rant from the last video, he did those movies from Dusk Till Dawn and the Planet Terror Grindhouse movie. But another thing that sweetens the pot for me on this movie is the fact the screenplay was written by Kevin Williamson, who is super hot in Hollywood at the time because he just wrote Scream 1, Scream 2, and he did I Know What You Did Last Summer. So he was really hot at the time and he was trying to do shows, and the people over at Miramax wanted to have him direct the movie, but he was kind of wanting to direct a different movie at the time, so they brought in Robert Rodriguez instead. Honestly, they made a really good call because I really like how this turned out. I'm sure Kevin Williamson would have done a great job, but man, this movie is just great. It's perfect for me. I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown so that way you know exactly what you're getting into. This is going to be the spoiler-free part of the movie. We're going to get into the spoilers in about a minute or two. But this movie, I saw it best described as The Breakfast Club meets The Thing. The Breakfast Club is probably my favorite John Hughes movie, and that fused with my favorite John Carpenter movie, it is amazing. This movie is super quotable. I think it's very cheeky. The practical effects for the alien look really cool, and the casting in this movie is just great. Like I said, we're gonna get into that in a minute when I start naming names, but trust me, if you guys watch this, you guys might even recognize more people from different movies that I haven't seen or something like that, and it's still gonna be really fun. This movie is just so 90s, and I love it. This takes place in bumfuck nowhere in Ohio because of fucking course it takes place in Ohio. Pretty much its parasitic aliens start to take over this small little town, and the first thing they get their tentacles into is the faculty. Of course, that's where we get the name. There you go. So it's up to these 6 students to try to figure out what's going on, save their school, save their town, and save the world at the same time. So these people are fucking galactic heroes, man. These aliens are out here trying to terraform and take over other planets, and the only thing that's going to get in the way is an emo, a nerd, a jock, a preppy asshole, the new chick, and the bad boy. Now, it has a bit of a mystery to it, like I said, with The Thing, because you never know who is infected, and you don't know what's really going to happen. It gets a little meta here and there because it brings up Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Puppet Master, and I think it's very tongue-in-cheek when it talks about those things kind of ripping off one another. And then this movie's kind of doing that same thing in a way, but it's just done very well. To me, this is a movie that can almost rival Scream, at least for me, but that's mainly because they're both written by the same dude, and they have a lot of the same feel. It is pretty much just Scream, but with aliens. You don't know who, in air quotes, the killer is or what's really happening. You're just going along with these teenagers who are trying to go through their own personal problems, and on top of that, they got an alien fucking invasion just happening right there in their own backyard. It's funny, it's witty, it's cheesy, and just a great watch to watch with your friends. Because I introduced this movie to a few of my friends and they all loved it, and it was honestly a blast to watch it with more people. I'm an only child, so I kind of grew up just watching this movie by myself, and I still had a blast. So that was really therapeutic for me, and that was kind of something, and I really enjoyed it. So please check it out. Let me know what you guys think about it. Tag me on Twitter at LamarStaysWeird. It'd be cool to talk about it. This movie deserves more love and appreciation, man. It really, really does. Now, in case none of that sells you on it, I am going to tell you guys a bit of who the casting is. So just so you know how wide of a range the casting of this movie really is. You have 2 people that are making their film debut in this movie, and that's going to be Jordana Brewster, who I mainly know as Mia from the Fast and Furious franchise, and she played Chrissy in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning back in 2006. And then you have Usher, the fucking Confessions 1 and 2, and the Let It Burn dude. pop star sensation Usher. I don't know why the hell he's in this film, but dude, that's one of the weird casting choices right there. Fucking Usher is in here. You got Josh Hartnett from 30 Days of Night and Lucky Number 11, and fucking H2O. Halloween H2O, man. I completely forgot he was in that fucking movie, but that's another one right there. You got Selma Hayek, which I believe everyone should know who Selma Hayek is at this point. She's from another Robert Rodriguez movie, From Dusk Till Dawn, and she was recently in Marvel's Eternals. Robert Patrick, the fucking T-1000 from T2. What? Famke Janssen, if I'm saying that name right, I hope I am, but she played Jean Grey in the early Bryan Singer X-Men films. Jon Stewart, the fucking host of The Daily Show. Christopher McDonald, fucking Shooter McGavin from Happy Gilmore, man. Like, what? And another one from Horror Legacy, Piper Laurie. She played the mom, Margaret White, in Carrie. Dude, she was one of the scariest things in that movie. The mom from Carrie used to freak me the hell out, dude. Carrie going around covered in blood using the dark side of the force on everybody didn't really scare me at all. But her mom, holy shit, dude. She used to freak me out. Her Bible thumping mother, bro. And then last but not least, I mean, there's still a few other people, but these are the main people that I know. Elijah Wood, before he became fucking Frodo Baggins, dude. And a fun fact, he was actually convinced by somebody on the set of the faculty while filming this that he should go try out for Lord of the Rings. And before that point, he never read the books. So without the faculty, we probably wouldn't have had one of the best trilogies of all time. One of the best fantasy adventure trilogies of all time. So people definitely need to put some respect on the faculty, man. This movie deserves way more love from the horror community, and I'm not seeing enough. Go check it out. Maybe come back and listen to this if you want a recap of the whole movie and hear my thoughts about it and talk about it and such. That'd be really awesome. I'd appreciate it. Maybe you listen to this and hopefully it convinces you to watch it by the end of it. But I'm gonna let you know it's spoilers from here on out, alright? Capiche? Let's go. We're already starting this movie out on the right foot, popping some punk and two-stepping all the way. Because the very first needle drop is The Kids Aren't Alright by The Offspring. Honestly, I don't think I could think of a better needle drop to start off a movie. Now that I think about it, a really good contender would be Blink-182's Every Time I Look For You. That is the opening track to American Pie 2. And American Pie, oh man, those movies I hold near and dear to my heart. Mainly the first two. In the early 2000s and late 90s, man, they were out here popping the punk all the time, and I really love it. And I like how pop punk is having a bit of a comeback right now. It is fantastic. What a time to be alive. So we start the movie off with some football practice. This is to show that this town is really football oriented. That's kind of the biggest thing they got going for it. My hometown, Vidalia, Georgia, VHS represent. That town was nothing without football, man. That was the only thing running it. We were in South Georgia, so not a whole lot going on, kind of in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. And high school football reigned everything. This town would come together like crazy for the football games. And it was only an excuse for me to go out on the weekends and do some dumb shit with my friends. I wouldn't even watch the football games. I would just go to see the out-of-town girls and be out in public with no supervision. I'm going to go off in a tangent a little bit because I want to stress how important it is. So this movie, getting their Friday Night Lights on, is not far-fetched because it was redonkulous in my hometown. Shit would get serious. So it was these two towns in this county, Lyons and Vidalia. I grew up in Vidalia. Lyons was right next door, man, like super, super close. Like we shared the same Walmart and everything. So the territorial feuding was like very real. We were in the South, so obviously all these country people, man, they had their fucking pickup trucks and shit. They would deck them out, paint them. But the biggest thing was flags. Everyone would try to make their own flags and just put them on their cars and just drive around with these big flags with school pride. But it became sort of a tradition to hunt down each other's flags and steal them. It was pretty much just trying to tear down one another. That's all it was. They would keep the flags, and then whenever it got to the pep rally of the day before the game, a lot of times people would just tear them up in the gymnasium or light them on fire, you know, to get the school spirit going. But a lot of people really started to take that serious, and I'm not gonna lie, I definitely indulged a little bit, got into a few scrapes and scruffs. This was another thing I would do completely unsupervised, and it is hella dangerous now that I look back on it, but man, was it fun. People would follow you if they saw a flag and they wanted to get it because everyone wanted to be the one that stole a flag from somebody, man, that earned you some street cred right there, you know? So you would get followed, you would probably get ambushed at a red light, a drive-through, anything, man. Anytime, anywhere, it was free game. The McDonald's person that is taking your order in the drive-through could probably be the same person that's gonna go rip your shit down by the time they go hand you your order. That's how ridiculous it was. But a lot of times it would get very serious because a lot of fights would happen, people would jump people would even paintball each other's cars, use BB guns, and even run people off the road. That was one of the last stories I heard after I left town. Somebody I knew got ran off the road in one of their big trucks and completely totaled their shit. He's still alive because I do follow the Toombs County Police Department page, so I could kind of see from my hometown from people who are still there, who got arrested and whatnot, because I'm nosy like that. I absolutely don't talk to anybody from my hometown anymore whatsoever. So if any of you are from Vidalia, Lyons, or just Georgia in general, we don't know each other. But yeah, that shit would get really wild. I've stolen a few flags. I've been a part of protecting flags, gotten some fights here and there, and some full-on car chases trying to lose some people. It was a ride. Being a teenager around that time was definitely wild. But I digress, so we're going to move on. So the first person that we are made aware of is Coach Willis. That is Coach Willis, who is played by Robert Patrick. He is a real hard ass. He's all about football and get it right. He's all about talking shit to his team and kicking over stuff when things don't go his way. So he's a real hothead. Once practice isn't going right, he just tells everybody get the fuck off the field, and he just starts having a bit of a tantrum. Once everybody else is gone, somebody approaches him. We don't get to see who approaches him because we only get to see the shadow of them cast onto him, and then we just fade to black. And this isn't one of those movies you have to pay a lot of attention to, but if you do, you really notice these things. Once they start showing all these characters, you get a sense of who they are. And that's on purpose because whenever that alien finally takes over some people, you're going to notice the differences. They're no longer the same way. They completely change their mannerisms. After a late night school meeting, we're introduced to Principal Drake and a few other teachers. They're talking about how the school is falling on hard times and how a lot of budgets are just being cut. No field trips, no new computers, no school play budget. But of course, the football team is going to get everything they want. You know, they're going to get new jock straps because it's a football town, man. They're going to prioritize that. And that's how it was with mine. I was part of the first ever film class of VHS, and we didn't have shit. We only had a few camcorders, no editing equipment, no real computers to do anything on, and our teacher didn't even really know what to teach us. I never realized how much I was missing out until I went to a trade school to learn film, and I was able to be shown just how much we were lacking. I aced that class literally all because I hung out. That's all we did. We just hung out. There was nothing to really teach us because there was nothing there. So I know what it's like to be on the shitty end of a school that doesn't really have a budget to do anything really cool. But the meeting ends and all the teachers start to leave. Principal Drake realizes she forgot her keys, so she has to go back into the school. It's all dark and pitch black, so she has to walk her way back to her office. And then she runs into Coach Willis, and now he's really calm. He has this strange demeanor and how he carries himself, but he's very alien. He's telling her how she looks pretty, and she's just kind of assuming that he's drunk and is telling him, you know, you should probably go home, kind of sleep it off a bit. I think that's what you need. But he's trying to keep her there, keep her a bit distracted, asking her for a pencil. And she's getting irritated with the whole confrontation because he's standing in the doorway. He won't let her pass. So she eventually just, you know what? Fuck it. Here's a pencil. She gives him a damn pencil. And he's just looking at it and then just shoves it through her palm. Completely pierces her shit. And she freaks out and just grabs her keys and just slices him in the face. But while doing so, she ends up dropping him. Now, she's able to get away for a second, and now it starts this whole chase throughout the school. She's being chased by the fucking T-1000, man. I'm so surprised that she can outrun this guy. I'm pretty sure Robert Patrick had to hold back, because back when they were filming T2, homeboy kept outrunning vehicles. If I remember correctly, I think it was the garage scene where he starts to chase the T-100 and John Connor. But he would keep catching up. He just knew how to maintain his physique and that posture, but he would just keep running and outrunning. So they had to keep reshooting it and speeding up more and more and more because they're trying to maintain a safe environment by not having it go too fast. So that way they can film everything properly and they can also protect the actors on the motorcycle. But he would just catch up, man. He is 100% built different. She eventually makes it back to the door that she originally came in and realizes it's locked from the inside. And of course, she doesn't have her keys, so she has to go back to the principal's office. And Coach Willis is just taunting her. He's on the announcement speakers, report to the principal's office. So he's taunting her, and I love it. It's very eerie. And while she's freaking out about the door, Mrs. Olson comes up, and that's the actress that played Carrie's mom. And Principal Drake's asking her if she has her keys, if she can open the door, and she says she doesn't have her keys, so she's sitting there waiting. Principal Drake tells her, all right, I have to go get my keys. She eventually finds her keys, comes back. Coach Willis is in the hallway waiting for her, chasing her down one more time, but she's able to unlock and then lock the doors back again. And she's safe. She trapped the imposter inside the school. But whenever she turns around, Mrs. Olson is just staring at her. Weirdly just staring, not even blinking. And out of nowhere, she raises this pair of scissors and just starts stabbing away at Principal Drake, just murdering her right there in front of the coach. And that's the opening to the movie, man. We know some shit's going on, so we know 2 people are infected right now. You got the coach, then you have Mrs. Olson. And our first kill, Principal Drake. And then we hit the title card, the faculty. And now we kind of get just random shots of the school. You get to see characters making their first appearances on the screen. We get introduced to the bad boy, Zeke, who's played by Josh Hartnett. He's rolling around in his black GTO with red racing stripes, taking up 3 parking spots because he's just a badass like that. And he just has one of the weirdest fucking haircuts ever. I don't know why, but he has that haircut in this movie and in Halloween H2O. I don't know why he has this weird ass haircut in both of these fucking movies. And both of these movies came out in 98, so I'm not sure why. I've never seen anybody else rock this style but him. I don't know, it just kind of fits him. I don't get it. And then we get introduced to Casey, and I kind of like how they do these freeze frames whenever they introduce somebody, and they have like the little name title on the side. So we get Casey, who's played by Elijah Wood. He's the nerdy kid that just gets bullied and looked down on. We get Stokely, who's going to be the emo chick, played by Clea Duvall. I know her from The Grudge. She played Jennifer in that movie, the 2004 American remake. And she was one of the detectives in the Heroes show. I don't know if anybody remembers that. It's the one that had Zachary Quinto, Hayden Panettiere. That's where I got first introduced to Hayden Panettiere. It was a really cool sci-fi show that unfortunately suffered from the writer's strike back in the early 2000s. Because of that, man, that show went downhill and it was so sad. First 2 seasons are bomb. She runs into our star quarterback, Stan. He's the one that's on the football team. He's the jock that kind of just wants to better himself. So he's not a typical jock. He's self-aware that he just doesn't want to be a jock anymore. He doesn't want to be known for that. He wants to try to do better in school and go to college based on his brain, not because he's good at throwing shit. And he also wants to quit the football team. That's why he goes to tell his girlfriend, who does not really give a shit, and she's all very superficial and all about social standings. And that is Delilah, played by Jordana Brewster. And man, is she a bitch in this movie, dude. She is like a young Gale Weathers, and I hate it so much. I feel like this is exactly how Gale Weathers is like in the Scream universe when she was younger. She's all about herself. She's about her looks and her social status. Oh man, I don't like that character. And I forgot to mention that Stan is played by Sean Hatasi. I see on his IMDb, I'm not super familiar with him. I only know him from this movie. He's big into TV. He played on Animal Kingdom as Pope, and he played in Southland as Detective Sammy Bryant. So homeboy just likes playing a cop, I guess. I mean, cool, good for him. Cops and robbers, I used to play that shit too when I was younger. I didn't turn it into a career, sadly, but I mean, hey, you know, to each their own. And then we get the new chick, Mary Beth. She always introduces herself because she's a southern girl from Atlanta and likes to talk like this and introduce herself and say things like, you look very pretty and no piercings, bring out your eyes. Okay, I don't really know how to do a fucking southern accent, so nobody give me shit, okay? I don't have the twang just because I was raised up in Georgia, okay? So hop off. But I do think it's a fun fact. The first person that she talks to is actually a cameo from Robert Rodriguez's sister. And she looks like a Chicana with the tattoos and the piercings and just not really talking to her because she's asking where something was and the chick just points and that's it. I think it's really funny, but that's cool, man. You got to keep the family in there. Keep it in the family. Okay, I'm from the South. I know I probably shouldn't say that, but you know what I mean. Support your family. And then we get a proper introduction to Zeke. He's in the bathroom giving these guys these fake IDs that they paid for, and this is a mind fuck for me, okay? You can already tell by how much I'm fucking up my words right now, and And I'm not going to edit out any of this. I don't care. Raw. I'm giving it to you raw, baby. The two guys that he's selling this shit to are casted as Fuck Up 1 and Fuck Up 2. You guys are not going to believe who Fuck Up 1 is, and I think it's oddly poetic. It is Danny Masterson. Hyde. Fucking Hyde from That 70s Show. He is casted as Fuck Up number 1. And if you guys don't know why that's funny, look it up. It's a tragic story, but man. And the other kid that's with him is Willie Wiggins from Dazed and Confused. I don't know if you guys really know that, but yeah, it's a 16-year-old, I think. I think he was 16 at the time, Willie Wiggins. But they're not really big fans of the IDs that he gave him because one of them is obviously an Asian gentleman, so clearly not a white dude with piercings and a curly head of hair. But he just tells them, it's going to work and decides to give them his homemade drug. And it's in this little pen, like the big pins, the blue, the black. It's in those. It's encapsulated throughout the whole pen. It's just filled with powder. He gives them that, and it's his homemade drug called Scat. He gives them free hits. And I have to thank my wonderful girlfriend for this because she actually got me replica props of those pens. I got 2 of them, and they're mounted on my mic right now because she knows how much I love this movie. And I think it was only like $2-3 or some shit like that. It was honestly one of the cheapest and dopest gifts I ever got. I was so thrilled whenever I got this. And a little bit of their dialogue kind of gives away that Zeke is not a complete dumbass. He's a bad boy with a brain because he tells him that he's brilliant and he knows what he's doing. And Fuck Up number 1 is like, yeah, but aren't you repeating your senior year? So he kind of falls into the, you know what? I just stopped paying attention. That's all it is. I'm just too cool for school, man. And then that's when he gives them the drugs just to kind of shut them up and be like, here, have fun, go do this. And then now we move over to the faculty lounge room because that's where we get introduced to the teachers that we're going to see throughout the movie. And we get to see these little tales of who they are. Going back to what I said earlier, how you're going to see how these characters act and then you're going to see how different they are later. Because you're supposed to keep that in your head that they are going to change once they get infected. You got Mr. Tate, who's a history teacher. He's an alcoholic. He does not give a shit about the school anymore. So he always carries a cup of coffee and he always has a few shots poured in there. You see Mr. Furlong's character kind of trying to talk up Selma Hayek's nurse's character. He's a science teacher and he's kind of soft-spoken. But with Selma Hayek's nurse Harper, she's constantly sick, or at least that's her thing. She has a cold, but she's still working anyway because she wants to keep her sick days for the days that she feels a lot better and just wants a day off, which I completely understand. Yo, that is me to a max, and I feel like that's super relatable to anybody. Nobody wants their days off to just be sick, okay? People want to go out and party and have fun and live it up, man. We just want to live, laugh, and love on our days off, okay? Bringing it back, full circle to episode 2. And then you got Famke Janssen's character. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Miss Burke. But yeah, Jean Grey, pretty much. Now, she's a younger, very introverted, and soft-spoken teacher. She dresses very conservative-like, doesn't really show a whole lot of skin, those type of things. And then you have Mr. Furlong, Jon Stewart's character, asking about the principal. Has anybody seen her? Nobody really says anything. And that's when he notices the coach is just in the corner drinking a lot of water, man. Really trying to stay hydrated. And then here comes Mrs. Olsen. Carrie White's mother just walks right in, and she's all dolled up. She has her hair done, she has her makeup done. She's not really blinking, and she has this weird smile, not showing any teeth, but just smiling. And the coach just tells her how she looks very pretty today. And it's just, the camera is just fixed on her face for like a long period of time to give you that uncomfortable feeling like, ugh, yeah, something's up with this old lady. And I'm not going to go completely scene by scene like I did last time with Renfield or Blade Runner. This one, I'm going to kind of skip some scenes that don't really require a whole lot of explanation. Plus, I want to give you guys a little bit of something to go watch. Some of the key points where you get to see how these characters are. You get to see Zeke in class. He's smart whenever they're talking about this book with Miss Burke. She's the literature teacher, I'm assuming. He's able to answer her question correctly about this one character from a book. He gives her like a different point of view to look at how the character feels about something, and she says, that's a good way of thinking about it, So that's kind of telling you, like, yeah, he is smart, he's not dumb, but the way he just kind of interacts with her and smiles at her, it's really giving off that, yeah, I'm attracted to my teacher, but she's the innocent teacher that's probably not really going to say much or reciprocate those feelings openly, but, it's one of those things, an improper relationship, I guess you would say, kind of developing in the process. And then we have another conversation between Delilah and Stan. He didn't get to tell her last time because she was so fixated on her own shit that she was just kind of ignoring what he wanted to talk about. So he tries to tell her again one more time, like, yeah, I'm thinking about quitting football. I'm not playing tomorrow. She's like, oh, like, why? Why don't you want to play? He's like, no, I'm quitting the team. I don't want to play anymore. I want to focus on my academics. I want to get into a good school. I don't want teachers kissing my ass all because I know how to play football. And then she just kind of tears him down a little bit, saying, yeah, no, studying's not for you. Like, you're not really good at it. You should just stick to what you're good at. And then tries to make it about herself by saying, oh, so like, what am I supposed to do? He's like, what do you mean? She's like, oh, head cheerleaders are supposed to date star quarterbacks, not people who want to be in academics. And then he tells her not to be superficial. And then in one of the bitchiest things ever, man, like, God, I can't stress how much I don't like this character, but that's the point. You're not supposed to like her. She just says, wow, superficial, 4 syllables. Maybe you can do it. Like, oh, dude, what a kick in the balls right there, man. The man is trying to better himself and the woman is just putting him down. What kind of shit is that? But he does go on to try it. He's not all talk. He definitely tries. And one of the next scenes we see him in, he's raising his hand. He's correcting Mr. Tate on what chapter they're on because he's trying to pay attention. And even the teacher doesn't give a fuck. It's like, oh yeah, you know, we're on chapter 4 or whatever. And Stan's like, no, yeah, we're actually on chapter 5. We covered that last week. And he's like, oh, whatever, man. All right, fine. Guys, go to chapter 5. That's what Stan said. That's what Stan wants, man. Because Stan is a man with a plan, and all he wants to do is understand, to say who he is and how he am, and kick Delilah's ass to the can because she doesn't know where she stands. Bars. Yeah, buddy. Got the bars. My girlfriend's gonna hate that if she listens to it. She hates when I try to rhyme and rap because I can do that. And she doesn't like the fact that I can interact, breathe in and breathe it back, and go tit for tat because that's where I'm at in life. I paid the price to do it right. All right, I'm gonna stop right there because I'm just gonna go off and have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. My bad. So the next few characters that we see interacting are gonna be Mary Beth and Stokely. So she notices Stokely is sitting alone, so she goes up and tries to make friends because she says how she doesn't have any, and it looks like Stokely has less than that. So she can obviously tell that Stokely is just kind of an outsider and just doesn't really relate to people or just can't really connect. And so she empathizes with her and just wants to be a friend, man. Sometimes that's what we gotta do, man. People need to be friendly to each other. It's all love until some bitch named Delilah just comes up and starts making fun of her again. Her main joke is that Stokely is a lesbian. So she just accuses her of hitting on Mary Beth and just trying to get with her. And then, of course, Stokely getting bullied. She's one to talk shit back. And then Delilah's like, wow, you should be a better representation for your people. And that gets Mary Beth confused. Like, what do you mean your people? What do you mean by that? And that's straight up what Mary Beth does. Just pretty much, what do you mean by that? And so she explains to her, oh, yeah, you know, she's a violent lesbian. And then Delilah just straight up asks if Mary Beth is a lesbian at all. And Mary Beth just says, I'm not aware of any lesbianism in my lineage, which I've never heard anyone other than this movie use the word lesbianism. I don't know why. I just never really thought that was a word, but I don't know. It was weird. But fun fact, Clea Duvall, who plays Stokely, is actually a lesbian in real life. So I wonder if there was some sort of relatability, because I think she said that she actually used to be a lot like Stokely when she was in school. So it's kind of weird how it all gets pretty meta, my dude. Now we're on to the Discovery Channel part of the movie. Casey is sitting alone at the bleachers having some lunch. Once he gets up to walk away, he notices something on the field. He picks it up and realizes it's some sort of creature, but it's not moving or anything. And then he gets startled by the coach. The coach is just looking at him because he is a small frame dude. Like, Elijah Wood is a tiny dude. Like, he's shorter than me. He is 5'5". I am 5'6". Elijah Wood is one of the few dudes I can feel taller than. And the coach is just looking at him saying, you don't look like you're not into sports, are you? Like, you don't really do sports. And Elijah says, no, I don't think anybody should just be running unless they're running for their life or being chased or something. And the coach is just kind of creepy, like, I like that. Yeah, like, that sounds good. Like, I like that. Of course, he doesn't say it that fucking creepy. But yeah, it's just kind of weird that he does say it. He does say it sort of like that. And so it freaks him out a little bit, so he kind of starts to backwalk, and then coach just like bucks at him and says, get out of here. And so he runs away. And then now this is kind of in a passing scene. This is where we see another person is about to get infected. So Mrs. Olson is seen by Stokely while she's drinking out a water fountain that she goes into the office of Mrs. Brummel. She's like the oldest teacher there. And the whole time she's just making eye contact with Stokely while she's walking and turning into the room and then closes the door. So like the only thing going through my mind in that scene is the Among Us kill sound. And while Stokely's watching that go down, she turns away and walks and runs in the stand. This is like the second time they run into each other in this movie. But she's just like, get a fucking seeing eye, dog. And then he just said, maybe if you didn't paint your fucking eyes shut. And I swear the dialogue in this movie, there's so many quotable lines. Now, because Casey found that specimen on the field, he takes it to the science teacher, Mr. Furlong, John Stewart. Takes it to him, takes it into the class. They start looking at it under a microscope, and they realize that it's obviously not meant for the environment that they're around. So obviously it could be something aquatic or maybe just something not around from the area. So they're kind of questioning it. And this is where we get to show off the brains of the bad boy, Zeke. He's like, oh, it could be this one thing, maybe. And Mr. Furlong goes, yeah, correct, possibly. So Zeke goes over there and just kind of like moves him out of the way. And Mr. Furlong just kind of side-eyes him because he's taking over the experiment and just looking at it. So he's talking about it, how it could be something that escaped from the 20th century that's still alive. And Mary Beth's just like amazed, like, wow, you seem to know everything. He just looks at her and honestly, he just looks at her, smirks, and just says, I'm a contradiction. And I don't know why. I mean, he's a charming dude. And I don't know. It just gave me little butterflies. Like, he just kind of swooned me right there. I kind of got rizzed, as the kids say nowadays. I got a little rizzy. And Usher doesn't have too many lines from this movie, but he just says, wow, Stokely, it could be from your planet. And so Stokely just, like, shoves him in a way, just kind of, like, shoulder bumps him, and he knocks over a beaker that had some water in it, and it falls onto the alien, and then it starts moving. So it's kind of, like, brought back to life, kind of resuscitated, and it's moving a bit. So obviously water is the trick here. But while she bumps him, she calls him a blood fart. Like, come on. Who says that shit, dude? Really? I kind of love when movies have a bit of exaggerated dialogue. I think one of the best people known for that is Diablo Cody. Two of her movies are very, very quotable. Jennifer's Body and Juno. They have exaggerated slang, I guess would be the term. I don't know, very creative way of talking and talking shit. And both of those movies do it perfectly. And I feel like this movie kind of does it here and there with some of the shit that they say. I'm going to point it out every now and then with little phrases that I like. But back to the alien. So once they see it start to move, Mr. Furlong has a fish tank. So he takes the tray that it's on and takes it over to the fish tank and dumps it in. And notice that it starts to swim. Now that it's alive, he wants to run another test. So he puts on some gloves to try to feel it, to see if the texture of it changed at all, if it adapted to the environment. And it's trying to swim away from him. And once he's almost there to touching it, it duplicates or replicates, multiplies, whatever. It divided into two. Now there are two completely different entities. There are now two imposters in the fish tank. So everyone is amazed, like, holy shit, it just turned into two. And so while they're kind of amazed and looking at it, his hand is still in there and it gets bit by one of them. So now that they know the thing has teeth, it is a predator. And nobody really asks if Mr. Furlong's okay. And he kind of notices. He's like, yeah, I'm fine. And his hand just has quite a bit of blood from the tip of his finger. So they're kind of just staring at it. And Stokely looking at the creature through the tank as she puts her hand up to the glass. And this is where we get to see these tendrils that the alien has, these little tentacles or whatever that are attached to it. They kind of form like the veins of her hand on the other side of the glass. They kind of just take the shape of it. So that's giving you another hint. Just being next to a human, like so close like that, it's already trying to replicate the shape. Now, the only people missing from this scene to see that this thing actually happened was Delilah and Stan. Stokely, Mary Beth, Zeke, and Casey, they're in the room and they get to see this thing happen firsthand. So they already have some sort of belief that something is a little weird. While all that is happening, Stan finally musters up the courage to tell the coach, I don't want to play football anymore. You know, it's, I want to do different things. And the coach is talking to him. It's like, okay, I don't want to stand in the way of the human condition. You want to better yourself. That wouldn't be a very human thing for me to do. That's how he talks. So obviously very alien, trying to nail it into your fucking head. Yeah, the T-1000 is an alien, man. So now we cut to where they're in the locker room. It's Casey and Stan in the locker room. Usher's walking around, look for him because I believe he's like second captain or whatever the hell the ranking is in sports. But he's walking through and they're trying to go find Stan to talk to him. And so he runs into Casey. He obviously bullies Casey. Casey's trying to stand out of the way and just hold himself against the locker to kind of be out the way. and he still gets ran into by Usher. And Usher just, and I'm gonna read some dialogue here because I kind of like what gets said here. Usher's like, "Hey, pisswad, you're in my way." And then Gacy's just like, "I'm sorry, I was breathing here." He says that while Usher's walking away, and then Usher hears it, turns around and smiles. He's like, "Yeah, that's the problem. You're occupying my air, you anal probe." Like, dude, nobody calls anybody an anal probe. I mean, even if you were to call somebody an anal probe nowadays, I want to say maybe 9 times out of 10 it's correct. Everybody's done a little anal probing at some point in their lives. They're on the end of the anal probe or they're doing the anal probe. We're not going to go into specifics here, and I'm not going to judge anybody, but hey, do your thing. Do what you love to do. Show what you love to love. Just don't hurt anybody. So Stan just kind of gets their attention like, hey, I'm right here. What's up? And that's when Usher is like, yo, tomorrow night, like, big game. Like, yeah, right, we're gonna do it. So obviously they don't know that he quit the team already. He's like, yeah, yeah. So obviously he doesn't really look happy through the whole interaction, and Casey can kind of see that because he's just watching. And then while Stan tries to pass by him, he's like, wow, it must really blow to be you. And Stan's like, you have no idea. So obviously that's kind of what I like. They're not super one-dimensional characters. They all got their shit going on. At least most of them are kind of against the surface value that you're supposed to see right there. They're like, there's more than meets the eye. Okay, Transformers said it best. And then we get a shower scene, but don't worry, we don't get to see any nudity, no dong, no boobs, no butt, none of that. But Stan is in there showering, and he gets approached by somebody. We don't know who it is until like the big camera reveal, but it's Mrs. Brummel that got infected earlier. Now, she doesn't really come off as infected, but she looks kind of unwell. She starts tearing off her clothes. I don't know if you guys could hear that. I pulled my jacket and my zipper started automatically going down. But she starts pulling off her clothes and saying how she can't breathe. And so he's kind of freaking out, like, Mrs. Brummel, what the fuck are you doing in here? Like, that kind of weird. And she kind of like holds on to him, like hugs him, like she's weak and like holding on to him. Casey runs in, sees what's happening, and Stan tells him to go get help. So he's trying to kind of like comfort her and like rub her head. But while doing that, a chunk of her scalp just sticks to his hand, like the hair and stuff, and just comes off. And it just falls to the ground. And one of the creepiest scenes to me when I was younger. That was so fucking weird. And you see like part of her head, not part of her head, but like definitely like a chunk there is kind of missing. And it's so gross. And Stan is obviously freaked the hell out. And then it does a zoom up of her face, and her face is kind of like changing. But off screen, the teachers deal with the situation. And so now Stan's talking to Mrs. Olsen, the second person to be infected. And they try to cover it up and say that she had cancer. That they were hoping she would stick it out throughout the year, that she would last. But yeah, so that's what it was. So kind of good excuse going on right there. That's a viable excuse. While she's talking to Stan, Casey's just sitting there looking out the window and notices the coach is standing out on the field while the sprinklers are going off, just enjoying all the water. Nailing it home that he's infected, and Mrs. Olsen sees Casey just looking out the window and just staring at him. And then they choose to do this weird zoomed in 3 times. So it's like, bum, 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 or 4 times. And so it gets closer and closer, like each time it just jump cuts closer and closer to her face. And then it just does this weird cartoony zoom out. I don't know, very weird choices, but it conveys the weird scene, definitely. So by this point, school is dismissed, the bell rings, a lot of people are leaving. In the parking lot, we see Zeke, and he's selling bootleg porn. He's selling VHS bootleg porn of Neve Campbell and Jennifer Love Hewitt, obviously the leading ladies in another few Kevin Williamson projects. They're asking like, oh, if they're full frontal nude, and he says, yeah, of course. And man, do I remember the days of having to remember timestamps to where you could go see some boobs, man. People don't have to do that anymore. They got the internet. They just look up everything. It's so easy nowadays. It was way harder back then just to see some areolas, God. Maybe one day I could probably elaborate further. I might try to save that for another time. I feel like a perfect movie to talk about that would be American Pie. But just the extent that people would go through back then just to see porn when you didn't really have access to any, it is ridiculous. I've done, yeah. We're gonna move on from there. So Mrs. Burt kind of catches Zeke selling stuff in the parking lot, and she approaches him about it and says, it's school property, can't do that. He's a smart ass, sits on his car, says, well, technically I'm on my property. He's like, like, you're a little uptight. Maybe you could be interested in something. So he offers her chocolate laxatives, which, wow. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know how often stomach problems are a thing, especially once you get older. Because, man, living with my girlfriend, a woman, boy, do I know all about the stomach problems going on. And every now and then, I got the bubble guts too, but hey, things happen. Change up your diet, eat some good stuff here and there, and maybe you won't have a big deal. I don't know why I go off onto these things. But yeah, so he offers her chocolate laxatives. It's like, oh, you know what? Not that? Okay, cool. What about these? And it's cherry flavored condoms. So she's just kind of like in disgust and like clutching her pearls in a way, like, oh, you're gross. And obviously feeling very disrespected. And so she kind of just leaves in defeat, which is kind of sad. And I think even he kind of feels bad about it in a way. He's like, damn, I kind of did that. Just by the look on his face, kind of it seems like it wasn't something he was really proud of. I guess he took it as a joke, but it's like, might have went a little too far in that one, maybe. And now we finally get to see Casey and Delilah interact. We honestly haven't really seen them interact too much. So I like how we do get a bit of these group sessions between a lot of the people. The only person that doesn't really interact with a whole lot is Zeke. So far, Zeke has only really interacted with side characters pretty much up until this point. He doesn't really talk to a whole lot of people. I don't really consider the point of the class where he's kind of talking to everyone. Not really. Not like a one-on-one scene like most of these people have kind of had together. But Delilah, she's trying to find a new story. Obviously, she wasn't interested in Stan's quitting the football team. She doesn't give a shit. So she wants to find something else. She wants spicy. She wants the spicy meatball. That's what she wants. So while her and Casey are walking around, he's telling her, hey, we found like a new species and maybe that'd be pretty cool to publish. She doesn't really give a shit though. And while they're walking by, they see a vendor bringing in jugs and jugs of water. So the water is starting to become very apparent around here. It's getting very moist in Hawthorne High School. But Delilah has the bright idea to sneak into the faculty lounge and snoop around and see what they can find. While they're looking around, Casey comes up with the idea to talk about Mr. Tate's alcoholism. And then Delilah, like in normal bitchy fashion, she's like, oh yeah, nobody really cared about it. Neither did his wife when she ran off with the babysitter. So it's like, bro, come on, why are you just such an asshole? For no reason whatsoever. And so Casey gets kind of disgusted with just how she is as a person right now. He scoffs. And she's just like, what? And he just tells her straight up, you know what? You're actually kind of a cool person when you're not being a grade 8 bitch. And then out of nowhere, in a very narcissistic way, she just takes this as flirting. It's like, oh, are you hitting on me right now, Casey? And it's just super weird. It's very forced sexual tension. It's not even sexual tension. It's just weird flirty tension right there. And I feel like it's definitely one-sided. But obviously Casey does find her attractive because, I mean, she is a cute chick. So it's like kind of true, but I would not buy this shit if I saw this interaction. I wouldn't think so. And if I called her that, I'd be like, no, I'm not flirting with you. You're just an asshole, man. But while they're talking, they can see the silhouette of teachers about to come in. And it's the coach. The coach and Mrs. Olson, they go in and they start talking and drinking some water. What happened to Mrs. Brummel? And then they go and explain she was too old, like her body couldn't handle it. So she kind of just dried out, died. And while they're talking about taking over the whole school, starting with the faculty first, they haven't started on students yet. Not by this point. And then this is when the nurse comes in, Selma Hayek's character. She comes in, she's still sick, and she's just taking some medication. And then they kind of inch over and lock the door, and they kind of sandwich her in there. So the coach just attacks her and just forces her onto the couch and is trying to hold her down and put the tongue in her ear, because that's how they infect it. I guess it goes through the ear. You see it a few times go that way. So Casey and Delilah can't believe what the fuck is going on, so they're kind of like freaking out in there. So once they freak out, they move around in the closet a little bit, and out of nowhere, Mrs. Brummel's body just tumbles out from behind some clothes and stuff. So the aliens hear the noise and they look at the closet and they get a little closer. And so they just bust out of the closet, knocking them over and just running down the hallway. And on the way out, her foot gets grabbed by the nurse and she screams out for Casey. And Casey's already like out the classroom, out of the lounge, and he comes back to save her. And then so they start booking it down the hallway. And guess who it is? We finally see Principal Drake. She's alive. And she's very much infected as well. So she's there with Mr. Tate. They run into her and they start explaining what happened to her. And then they turn around and look, and all three of the faculty members are standing right there. The nurse, Mrs. Olson, and the coach, they're just standing there like nothing happened. They all had just weird, smug smiles. And Casey and Delilah can kind of piece things together and be like, oh, yeah, no, fuck this. Like, something's going on. So they fucking book it again. While they're running away, Casey slips and falls. And he calls out for Delilah. And she does not even look back whatsoever. She just fucking runs off. So it really shows you the type of person she is. She is 100% selfish. So she just books it and leaves, and then he just kind of dumbfounded, like, damn, she really did me dirty like that. And he just gets up and runs. But now we come back after some time, and Casey is back with his parents and some cops. And this is where we get Casey's dad, who is Shooter McGavin, dude. Fucking Happy Gilmore. Shooter McGavin. I love that movie so much. But yeah, he makes an appearance. Casey told them everything that's going on, so they're going there to look for the body. And of course, they don't find it. They cover it up. They had a dummy body in there, the one that you perform CPR on and shit. And they couldn't get a hold of Delilah, so Principal Drake has the idea, you know what, go to my office, and, we can call Delilah, try to get a hold of her. And now, this is another thing. One of the cops is Dwayne Martin. He plays Joel in Scream 2. He is Gale's new cameraman, and he was one of the smartest people in the Scream franchise because he just gets up and leaves. He says, fuck this, people are dying, I'm gonna take a taxi, I'm going back home. And you know what? He lives. And I believe he's still alive to this day in the Scream universe. I have no idea, but that's really cool. A little nice connection right there. But once they go into, air quotes, call Delilah, they hear a little bit of a rumble. Casey and everyone else standing outside the office. And the other cop is about to go check, but the other cop comes out, obviously infected. You can just tell by the straight face and how he talks. He's like, nope, nothing happened here. Just a little boy crying wolf. So now the aliens are in the police department, man. Now they're going to be taking over other parts of the town. Like, that's all they needed. Once they got the police department, man, everything else is going. City is going to be on lockdown. Casey gets taken back home, and they're trying to rummage through his room and figure out if he's on drugs or anything. That's what they're accusing him of. But he just keeps doubling down on everything, and they get tired of it. Shooter McGavin just goes, you know what? We're going to take away your music. We're going to take away your computer. We're going to take away the phone. And then the mom just kind of whispers, don't forget the porno. And he's like, oh, yeah, the porno. So they lift up his magazine. They grab the magazines, and he just tells them, and I've never heard this phrase to describe masturbation. No more flogging the bishop. That's what it is. No more flogging the bishop. I've never heard that. I don't know what the fuck that's about. I think it's really funny. Now, the next day that they're at school, while Casey's walking through the hallway, he passes Mr. Tate. And Mr. Tate is no longer drinking his spiked coffee. He is now just drinking a bottle of water. That's all he's carrying around with him now. Homeboy is off the wagon. Is it off the wagon or on the wagon? Fuck, I don't even know, dude. I don't really do anything but drink, but I thankfully I don't suffer from any sort of substance abuse right now. But yeah, it's one of those. So he's sober now. And then he runs into Delilah. Delilah takes him and shoves him into a bathroom to talk to him. She's not wearing makeup. She has a ponytail. She has glasses. And she talks about how she's in drag, trying to hide out and that they're out to get her. But my thing is, it's like, well, who just says drag, that they're in drag, that not a disguise? Like, I don't know, super weird. But she does worse than the Marvel movies. At least the Marvel movies, they had these giant, like, sunglasses and a ball cap to kind of cover up a good little bit of your face. This, not so ever. You're going exactly where they would expect you to possibly be. So you changing your appearance doesn't do anything. I don't know. It's so weird. And so they don't really know who they could trust anymore. And they start referring to, I guess, the aliens as they, because they don't really know what they're up against yet. So she just says, I'm going to go find Stan. And I'm pretty sure that's the only one she could really think of is the boyfriend that she mistreats like crazy. Like, yeah, I can probably rely on him to do something. So we cut to him, and he's talking to Stokely. Mary Beth kind of gets the hint that Stokely is into Stan. So while they're like walking by, she kind of bumps her into him. And so she starts asking him like questions and kind of talking. They have a nice little engagement. He's kind of being a little vulnerable and saying, yeah, I just want to be more, I'm trying to do better. And she's listening to him. She's doing something his girlfriend is not doing. She's listening to him and letting him talk. While they're talking, Stokely kind of lets it slip that she follows the games a little bit. And he thinks it's kind of cute. He kind of smiles about it and asks her, oh, yeah, you follow my games? Yeah, he gets to open up about how he wants to be more more than a football player. And he talks about this one time he made a D on a test, but because he did really well in this one game, Mr. Furlong changed it to an A. And Stan the Man just comes out with some bars. He just says, I worked hard for that D. That was my D. I deserved that D. I just wish people would let me be. Like, bro, bars, man. Like, we both got bars. Like that's amazing. I know it's stupid, and she can kind of relate to that as well. But while they're talking, Mr. Tate just comes up. He's like, "All right, class, here we go. I got an assignment for you guys. You guys are gonna write down your family tree, your immediate family tree, and then you're gonna write down your closest living relatives." Obviously, they're trying to go full invasion mode right now, and that is a really smart idea. Having an assignment for a family tree like that's bro. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have thought of that as a project to take over a planet, but you know what? That's really good. Very clever. Then we fast forward to after class. We see Stan and Stokely just kind of notice there's a line of people outside the nurse's office. And you know what? Another clever thing. They're doing fucking ear exams. One by one, just taking the students in there, looking into their ears, and giving them the old tongue twist. And then now this is where we're going to get separated in some more pairs again. So Delilah comes up to Stan and say, hey, I got to talk to you about something. So she takes Stan, and then Casey, he asks for Stokely's help and takes her as well. And Mary Beth and Zeke have been hanging out for a little while. They've just been talking, doing some flirting here and there. He's kind of getting to know her and vice versa. And while they're talking, getting to know each other, you start to hear a little bit of Mary Beth's backstory about how she moved up there. Her family, I believe, died in an accident, so she moved in with her cousins. And then fuck up number 1 and 2 come up, and they're asking him for more scat. So he's like, yeah, I got you. And they're like, cool. Do you have any more? Like, you got more on you? And he's like, yeah, sure. So they buy all that he has on his person. They buy it off of him. And then they ask him for even more. And then he just tells them, nah, like, I don't really have any. Or they're really acting weird. You kind of assume that it's tweaking, but I'm assuming it's the whole alien thing. But he just kind of hides some of the scat in his pocket. And he's just like, nah, I don't really have any more. And he tells them to use it in moderation. Like, don't go overboard with it. And while they're talking about all that, him selling more stuff, Miss Burke just comes walking up on him one more time, catching him selling some shit. And now she has changed. She has a walk about her. She has this confidence. She's not wearing a whole lot now. She has this red tank top and I believe like this black skirt. So he tries to like play it down. He's like, oh, Miss Burke, I don't have time for this. And then she tells him, I don't have time for this. And then she just starts ripping into him, talking about how his family's rich and they want to escape like his bastard son. So even if she were to get him in trouble, who can she talk to? Because nobody really gives a shit about him. And then while she's like going off on him, he's just like, whoa, woman, what do you want? And then she flips her shit, man. She does not like that pronoun whatsoever. She's like, woman? Did you just say woman? So she like grabs him by like the back of his neck and just like pulling him like closer to her face. She's like, if I see you selling this shit again, I'm gonna stick my foot like so far up your ass, you're gonna be sucking my toes until graduation. That is some weird sexual tension right there, man. I wouldn't know how to feel about that. So yeah, that was a very weird interaction. And I believe kids nowadays, if you threaten them with this type of shit, they would eat that shit up and be like, all right, bet. Make sure they're painted though. Like I want to see some French tips in the back of my throat at my tonsils. Tickle it with your pinky toe. Like weird shit like that. Yeah, I would imagine somebody wouldn't just take that comment in stride. They would play along, and at that point, what do you do? Do you double down? Like what's going on here? I don't know. So she just kind of shoves him aside and then moves along. And now we're at Casey and Stokely, and this is a really and I like this scene. This is a scene where they get kind of meta and they talk about everything going on. And now Stokely, I believe, is the sci-fi and horror nerd a bit. Because she talks about how everyone's acting strange. She's like, yeah, it's like they turn into the pod people or something. And Casey, by my surprise, doesn't really know what she's talking about. So she goes to explain Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And he's not taking it as a joke. He's like, wait, no, like, what if that's really happening, though? And obviously she doesn't buy it at all. And so he tries to go down the rabbit hole. And she's just saying, like, look, it's all fiction. It's fake. And then he tries to come up with this lesson that Miss Burke told him, write what you know. So what if it's real? What if that actually happened to somebody else and they wrote a story about it? And then Stokely tries to quickly shut him down and say, no, yeah, your theory's wrong. Jack Finney's The Body Snatchers is a ripoff of Puppet Master by Robert Heinlein. Now, I've only seen Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I believe it's the remake I've seen. I didn't really like it. To me, this movie is my Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I like how it's kind of meta and saying, like, oh, this movie ripped off that movie, but then this movie is kind of sort of ripping off those movies as well. It goes into a weird full circle, but I kind of dig it. This is the one for me. And then and then Casey brings up the X-Files, like, what if they're right? What if aliens been here this whole time and now they're back again? And where do all these movies come from anyway? What if people like Spielberg and Lucas are aliens, or what if they've been visited by aliens? And they're like conditioning our minds or preparing us for aliens to come around and take over or some shit. Kind of just like slow dripping information to the media or like the ideology of it. So that way you're kind of used to it by the time that it happens, which a lot of people theorize that's exactly what happened. And it's also quite possibly a thing. Tinfoil Hat is about to go on right now. But you got to think, we've known about aliens since the whole Roswell stuff back in the day. And then now we had all these pictures of little green men, little gray men, flying saucers, all these different old black and white movies that depict aliens and other sci-fi media like comics, games, So we've been fed this stuff for a very, very long time. As far back as I can remember in my childhood, I knew about aliens and I believed aliens were a thing. And of course, I still believe aliens are a thing in extraterrestrial life. So it's kind of like no surprise that that he's kind of right about something. Not saying like lizard people are a thing and all that, but if you're in charge of a society and you don't want society to crumble, or at least you're a powerful figure in society, you don't want to just throw your meat on the table and be like, "Yep, there it is. That's how big it is. That's the girth. That's everything right there, man. This is how it is. This is the truth." No, you can't really do that. You gotta like spoon feed it to them a little bit. Get them used to the idea. Like have the idea in their head. Yeah, aliens. Not a big deal. They're not really real. Or some people they do believe they're real. You condition the society little by little, like over 100 years, and then now, whenever we find out, oh yeah, UFOs are a thing. When the government finally releases all these files, like, yep, aliens are pretty much a thing. And then they don't even call UFOs anymore. They call them something else now because nobody's gonna know what the fuck that is. Everyone knows what a UFO is, but now nobody really buys it anymore. So they switched the game up. So now when they talk about other alien craft, it's under a different acronym. I can't think what, and I don't really feel like looking it up right now. So he's not completely wrong, and it's definitely something I could see powerful people doing to where society doesn't just crumble under the fact that everything that they know might be a lie. You know what I mean? So then Stokely tries to play along and say, okay, well, if it's all true, where are the pods? And Casey says, all right, well, there are no pods. And Stokely goes, well, in Puppet Master, there are parasites. And that's the one that sells Casey on it. He's like, boom, that's the one. So him and Stokely leave the library. They go to find Stan and Delilah, and they try to group up because they know those people are acting kind of normal, so they could probably trust them and tell them what's going on. So they meet up in the science hall to try to find the new species that Casey found earlier in the football field and talk about it and try to form a plan. But they go in there and it's missing, and they're having this whole talk, and they're trying to convince Stan and Delilah about what they talked about is real. Stan's not really buying it much at all. And you can kind of hear the argument in the vents going. So right next door, Zeke and Mary Beth are talking. They're almost about to make out, but they hear all that. It's like, oh, let's go in there and see what these guys are doing. So they go in there and they start to hear it out. Zeke's not really buying it and thinks it's really weird. And then Mr. Furlong comes in. And so they start to ask him, like, hey, where's the specimen? And Furlong's like, I sent it off to university. It's being looked at. They don't really buy it. So Zeke just flat out tells him, Casey thinks you're an alien, bro. And so Furlong kind of laughs about it, but closes the door. And this awkward silence just kind of takes over the room. And then Zeke's like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and get out of here. And then Mr. Furlong just grabs his arms like, no, take a seat. This will be over soon. And just kind of like shoves Zeke and then just starts manhandling everyone because everyone's trying to go past him to get out the room. So he's just shoving everyone back. And you know those old paper cutters, or like, I guess laminate paper cutters, whatever the hell? It's like the giant arm blade thing that you just bring down to like cut paper like precisely. Zeke grabs that and then like bends it and takes it off. So now he has like a weapon. And so while Furlong is kind of like holding Casey by the throat, and Zeke's telling him put down Casey and move the fuck out the way. So then he just shoves Casey and then tries to swing at Zeke. and Zeke just chops his fingers off. And this is where he gets very The Thing vibes. So those fingers kind of turn into more of those little aliens that are crawling around, trying to crawl towards the other ones. Furlong has these tendrils that are just coming out. And then he's trying to get the upper hand on Zeke and trying to infect him. And the only thing Zeke has to protect himself is the pens of scat. So he takes off the cap and just stabs him in the eye with it. And then he just starts spazzing out, like convulsing and stuff. And his eye starts foaming up and shit. And so he falls over the desk. And whenever they go to look, they see all this foam around his head. He's dead. The drug killed him, dried him out or something. And so they're all looking at it like, oh shit, we just fucking killed somebody. Like, we need to go. So on the way out, Casey takes a little cup and grabs another specimen. They're all trying to compose themselves before they get out of the room because they don't know who they could trust. So they got to try to act normal. And they just walk out, book into Zeke's car, and they go to Zeke's place. And on the way out, a lot of the students are just staring at them. So they definitely know like something's up. A lot of people are infected. And whenever they finally get in the car, Zeke's trying to listen to the radio to see if there's anything going on at all, and nothing. No radio stations, no music, no talk show hosts, unlike myself, because I'm pretty sure they would want to listen to my podcast while they're driving around town. That'd be really nice. I'm just kidding. But yeah. And so they decide, you know what, let's just kind of leave town. Let's just drive out of here. But remember earlier, the police, they got to the police. So now there's a police blockade on one of the roads leading out of town. And nope, not going to let anybody pass. So they book it and they just go straight to Zeke's. And here is where we get more of the Thing vibe. So they have the specimen and they're trying to figure out what they're up against. So he has this whole lab set up because, you know, he has a homemade drug he makes and his parents are rich and gone. So he has the whole place to himself. So he has this rat in there. They cut off a piece of the alien and they put it in there with the rat and it goes into the rat through its ear. Zeke snaps the neck of the rat and he dissects it. And then that's where he sees the alien dried out the rat. It absorbed all the moisture and all the tendrils and stuff are running all through the body. So this is where they see that, yes, it is very much a parasitic alien takeover type of deal. And so they look to Stokely like, hey, so what happens like if we find, I guess, like the main person and kill them? Like maybe it's a hive mind deal? Like what would happen like in the movies? And Stokely just says, well, in theory, they turn back to human. They're okay. So we don't have to like kill everyone. You know, we just find the leader and kill them. But of course, they have no idea how they can figure out who's infected or not. So Stokely says, well, in Body Snatchers, people lost their identities pretty much. They started to act different, kind of emotionless sometimes. And so this is where they all start to point fingers at each other, start turning on each other. Talking about how Zeke, all of a sudden now he's like really smart. You got Mary Beth, who's just the new chick. They don't have too much to go off of right there. And then Stokely, she used to use being a lesbian as a defense mechanism to kind of stay away from people because, of course, it's the 90s. Not too many people were big fans of gay people. And then you got Casey, who's being compared to Sigourney Weaver, going out and hunting aliens, all of a sudden a badass now, you know, really trying to be out there. We have Stan, star quarterback, who doesn't really want to be part of the team anymore. He wants to do academics. You got Delilah, who just doesn't wear makeup anymore. And people are like, yeah, you're wearing glasses and stuff, and we've never seen you go without makeup ever since like middle school or elementary school. So yeah, everyone kind of has some level of sus to them. But now this is telling. Because while they're all talking, a car pulls up in the street. So, somebody knows something. There might actually be a hive mind connection because there is a car right there. But now they're all having a hard time trusting each other. So Zeke has a bright idea. All right, take the test. We saw what it did to Mr. Furlong, so everyone needs to take it. So Casey's the first one to go. He takes a bump. Well, not really a bump, but he does a whole pin. And these pens aren't small. If you guys remember these, and it's just filled with powder. I mean, I have one in front of me for reference, and holy shit, dude. Like, that is a lot. So they take a thick line. But he takes it, no problem. No reaction. It's all good. So he just kind of sits because he just took it to the brain. And after like a minute or so, he does start to tweak a little bit, get the giggles, and make some dumb jokes. But while he's tweaking, obviously Stan's probably never been around somebody taking drugs, so he's like, what the fuck? But then there's Zeke, who just says, I'm not taking it. I'm not getting high on my own supply. I don't mess with my stuff, you know? He follows rule number 2 from Scarface, man. And Zeke has this gun that he had sitting out while they were running the tests in case anything were to go wrong. He has a gun that he can defend himself and maybe kill the alien. Stan grabs that, just points the gun at Casey, and Casey is just tweaking. He's got the giggles mad hard. And Zeke's trying to defend him, like, yo, just let him fucking tweak. Like, leave him alone. He's fine. So that's when Stan points the gun at Zeke and he's like, yo, you're fucking taking it. And so now Zeke takes a hit and nothing. No reaction. But now I like this. Stan is very trusting. Stan's just like, all right. He holds out the gun. Zeke trades him a pen for the gun. And then now Stan takes a hit. So no reaction there. So now Zeke is the one with the gun. He points it at Stokely. Like, hey, take a hit. And then I do like this exchange. She's like, no, I'm not putting that up my nose. It's so 80s. And then Zeke, I'm going to start using this line. I just got to figure out the context and how to use it. Don't call me dumb or anything, but I just want to make sure I use it right. But I like the terminology. Sometimes older slang is actually just kind of cool. Or just phrases are pretty cool. And then he just looks at her and says, aliens are taking over the Earth. Weigh it. And it kind of convinces her. I don't know why. I just like the way he just says, weigh it. I like that. Like, I don't know. That's a cool thing. Good dialogue, good delivery. I was like, man, that's cool. I got to find a way to, like, incorporate that into my daily vocabulary. But now she takes a hit and nothing. She just takes the hit like a champ. And so now, little by little, because more time is passing, everyone starts tweaking a bit. And the only two people left are Delilah and Mary Beth. Delilah doesn't want to take it. Mary Beth doesn't want to take it because she's stated earlier in the movie how she has allergies to medicine. Like, she can't even take aspirin. So doing something like that would just fucking kill her anyway. And then they just tell them, you know what? Both of you are going to take it at the same time. So it becomes a bit of a Mexican standoff. So they both have the pens up. They're getting ready to take it. It's all slow and dramatic. And they both snort. And guess what? I want to know who you thought. You know, you have two choices. 50-50, you might be right. And now, Mary Beth, no reaction. It's Delilah. She just kind of like scoots herself back in the chair, covering her face and stuff. And it's silent. Everyone's like, whoa, what just happened? And then they finally look at her face, and she has all these things just crawling around under her skin. She is the infected. She is the imposter, man. They were among us the whole time. Now, we have no idea when she got infected. But now they're kind of afraid to shoot her, so now she just starts destroying stuff. And Stokely gets a hold of the gun. She is 100% down and ready to shoot that bitch. She already does not like her. Now that she's an alien, she has all the right to go after her now. But not before she destroys all of the drugs and the station. And then she just busts through one of the doors and runs out to the car and gets in and drives away. So that tells you it is a hive mind, because one of the infected was already there and they already knew where to go. Why would they know where to go? They did, and they waited because they knew somebody would need an escape plan. So this is towards the third act of the movie right now. They got to figure out what to do and how to save everything, because now it is Friday. And where's everybody going to be on the Friday night? They're going to be at the football game. So they need to find like the head of the aliens, you know, the tip top. And of course, they got to do it soon, because with the new visiting football team there, they could just affect the football team and then let them go back to their hometown, infect them, and then it just goes all over. So they head to the school, and this is where they're going to try to have their final showdown and sort out the imposters. Now, while the football game is happening, every time the team is like tackling somebody from the opposite team, they're already infecting them. They're putting the aliens in them. And they assume Principal Drake is the head alien, which, if you remember correctly from the beginning of the movie, that is not true. But she sees them, and then she kind of just follows them and where they go, and they all meet up in the gymnasium. But they're ready for her because they knew she would probably be following. So they wait for her to come in, they tackle her ass, wrap her up in some sort of net, and they just tell her to take the drug. But she keeps up the act like, no, I'm real. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a teacher. You guys are attacking me. Like, you all are going to get arrested or expelled. Like, what is going on? Acting very afraid, keeping the whole charade up. But the fans, we already know what's going on. But because they wouldn't pull the trigger, Zeke grabs the gun from Stan and just boom, headshot. And she just goes down. And she doesn't move. No transforming into an alien or nothing. And then she just kind of starts to form a blood puddle around her. And then everyone starts to have doubts like, oh shit, we might have just actually killed somebody. And so they're all like on the verge of a freak out. But then she gets up And then all these little things are crawling under her skin, and then they pop out of her bullet hole, and these tendrils are poking out of it. And Mary Beth, she's the one holding a container of some of the last little bit of the scat that they have, and just throws it on her completely. And it just eats this woman alive, like throwing salt on a snail, dude. And she just foams up like crazy, and she's practically turns into like a skeleton. That they don't know if they cut the head off the snake, so they got to figure out and go to the football field. Maybe everyone's different, but nobody really wants to leave. But Stan, he's being a noble hero. He's like, sure, I can probably go do it. Stan finally makes it over to the football field. He runs away. And he sees all the like it's raining, and the coach and all the football players they're just standing there, just loving the rain. And every time lightning strikes, you could see under their skin and see the outline of the alien. And then we come back to the other group, and they don't know what's going on. They can't see what's happening. So while they're looking out the window, Stan just pops up at the window. I dropped the pen, like let me in, let me in. They're like, no, you get like we don't know if you're real or not. So they give him the last pen. They pass it underneath the door. Like, you better take this shit. And nothing. He just pours it out. He wastes the last little bit. Stokely is obviously heartbroken, and he's looking at her through the window. They're like on opposite ends, just staring like face to face. And he's telling her like how good it feels. There's no pain, there's no fear. Everything is great. Like, it's beautiful. It's such a wonderful feeling. And it's like, yo, if you do this, you will be beautiful. And that they want her. They want her to belong. And he's like, I want you. Zeke just threatens him with a gun, like, get the fuck out of here, leave. Like, I'll show you pain and shit like that. So then Stan runs away. So now we're down to 5 people. They're trying to brainstorm what to do now. And Zeke says, I might have some in my car. I might have some loose pins, maybe. So we can go out there. So Casey and Zeke, they run out. They go to the car. They're hiding in between the buses because the football team is out and about looking for them, because they know to be looking for them out there. While they're out there, they decide to use Casey as a distraction to go run around, get their attention. Like running around, and then eventually hides in a bus. Zeke is in his car trying to look around for the drugs. While he's searching around, he gets the feeling somebody's there. It's Miss Burke. Obviously being a little more flirtatious in her body language and how she looks at him and talks to him. And then she's like, yeah, I guess they need something. It's like, yeah, I think I got the right thing for you. And that's when he sees the scat in the floorboard in the car. That's when she says, oh yeah, I was thinking of something cherry flavored, if you know what I mean, hinting back to the condom. So a little more of that sexual tension between them. Jumps into the car, cranks the engine. She busts through the passenger window. She's now in the car, and now they're speeding around the parking lot, pedal to the metal, man. He's trying to put on his seatbelt while she's trying to infect him. And he just has the bright idea to crash into a bus. And like a ball of fire erupts. And she goes flying through the fucking windshield. And I think this is so funny because it's obviously a fucking mannequin or a doll that goes flying through it. So you could kind of see it bouncing around in the background with the slow motion and stuff. It's so fucking funny. And he's obviously injured from it, so he has to crawl his way out. Another thing reference, her head, she's decapitated. So her head now has these tentacles and is like just moving across the floor, trying to make it back to her body to reattach itself. And he's just kind of disgusted and just in awe and kind of just watching the whole thing happen. Her body finally picks up her head and tries to sit it on hers to kind of attach itself back. And Zeke's just like, fuck this. And it just runs away. He wants to get the fuck out of there. He doesn't know what's happening. He wants to leave. Now, while all that's happening, we're left with 2 people in the gymnasium, Stokely and Mary Beth. And Stokely's just kind of accepting a defeat. Like, they won, they got us. And they took away who Stan was. And this is where Mary Beth just goes, or maybe they made him better. And then she tells Stokely, I know you pride yourself on being an outsider, but like, what if you didn't have to be? What if you did belong? And then that's when Stokely kind of just gets wide-eyed. It's like, oh, shit. And then, out of nowhere, Mary Beth's arm just turns into this giant tentacle and just fucking slaps Stokely down the bleacher steps. That's when Casey comes in, and Mary Beth just morphs into the mother of the parasites. and a nice alien practical effects, and probably a mix of CGI as well. But it looked good in my opinion. The CGI in this movie is not too bad, honestly. I really don't think so. So they start running away, and she starts chasing them, going into a locker room, trying to hide. And Mary Beth just goes back to her human form, all butt ass naked, and walking into the locker room. And Zeke's finally able to catch up. Obviously, he doesn't know anything. He doesn't know what the fuck is going on. So Stokely is trying to tell him, it's Mary Beth, and then it becomes into this whole pointing fingers. And Mary Beth, she's kind of hiding behind a wall in the shadows, obviously very creepy. I don't know why you want to make your point from there. She's like, "Oh no, it's Stokely and stuff." And then Zeke's just like looking her up and down and is like, "But why are you naked?" And I guess she just didn't think of that. So she kind of just walks out and just trying to like convince them, like, "Oh yeah, like, don't you like my body?" And Zeke's like, "I saw you take the test." And then we get like a bit of a recap of that scene, but from a different angle, where she was about to take it. She was able to morph her body and close her nostrils. So she didn't even take the test. She didn't snort it. But she also used her pinky to turn into a tentacle and uncap the pen at the bottom so that it spilled out, so her pen was empty. And then Stokely tries to attack Zeke. And then Casey comes clutch and is able to like pull her off of him and shove her into like this cage area that they keep other sports equipment and lock it. And so they're able to get some space, and Zeke just tells him, "All right, you're gonna take this scat because he still has some pens. So you're gonna take some." Casey's like, "Now is not the time." And Zeke just goes, "Look, I've been gone like 5 minutes. I come back and everyone's an alien." He's like, "Now, if I have to Men in Black your ass, I will. Snort this." And so Casey does. So they're crouching around trying to stay hidden from the alien. Zeke just goes flying over these lockers and just lands on the ground as just completely incapacitated. While he's kind of roaming around this locker area and hiding away from her, he's able to come across Zeke and take some of the scat and is still trying to hide. And while Mary Beth is in her human form walking around, there's this awesome like silhouette. You see all these tentacles shining all over the room, like tentacle shadows, like all over the room. I think it looks really cool. It doesn't really make sense when you think about it, but I think it's really cool. And she just begins talking, like monologuing, bad guy monologuing, like, but he's able to make it out of the locker room and just start running. He runs back into the gym. And he goes to the bleachers and he hits the button on the wall to where it closes the bleachers. You know, whenever you had those big events at the gym, they would close the bleachers in and it would go up against the wall. That's what he does. And I never really, like, looking back on it, I never really realized how dangerous that was back then. I used to hang out underneath the bleachers all the time. And it's like, man, I really could have got squished and killed. So that's pretty gnarly. Hits the button and starts running all the way through it to try to get to the other side. She's following close behind him. And right before the end, he's able to make it through. And she gets stuck. Like, she's in her alien form now. She gets pinned in between the wall and the bleachers. She can't move or do anything. And then he just pulls out the scat and he goes, "Guaranteed to jack you up." The very same line that Zeke used in the beginning when he first gave the guys his scat. And is what you hear in the beginning of the podcast. You know, this very last line of my intro. A little fun fact right there. So then he like stabs her eye and she opens her mouth and just kind of shoots out this like mist, and it's projectile parasites that just pierce through his cheeks, and they're trying to like crawl in. A very nice practical effect. They're crawling in and they're getting further and further into his cheek. He's screaming and stuff. And so when it finally foams up a lot more and dies, the parasites in his cheek fall out, fall to the ground, and they kind of like dissolve away. So he did it. But then he goes back to check on everyone. Stokely, her parasites are out of her body and dissolved. And then they meet Zeke again, and they kind of just laugh about everything because they just saved the fucking world. And then we fast forward a month. Now, everyone kind of knows what happened, but of course, nobody fully believes if it's true or not because there's not a whole lot of proof. I guess everything just kind of dissolved, and there's nothing you can really go by. But Zeke is now on the football team. He's making eyes at Miss Burke in the bleachers. And she's making eyes at him. She does a little smile, a little wave. So obviously they got a little relationship going on. Everyone gets in a relationship now. You got Stan and Stokely. They're now together. They're dating. But now she's not wearing all black and the dark makeup, which I'm like, bro, what? Come on, I liked you when you were emo. I mean, if you want to change, cool. But now it's like, oh, she gets with the jock dude. Now she's no longer sad and emo. All she needed was love. And this one I don't like. I really don't like this. Then we cut to Casey, and it's Casey and Delilah. And so now they like share a kiss and they're dating now. I don't like that. I didn't get any hit of that. I know he did like her and think she was cute, but I don't think I don't think there was enough there to form a relationship between them two. But I mean, hey, that's how they want to end the movie, sure. So yeah, man, they saved human civilization right there. It's a fun ride. I love this movie so much. I probably watch it at least like once a year, I would say. I think this year I probably watched it 2 or 3 times. But I really love this movie. And if you guys do watch it, I hope you guys enjoy it just as much. Or if not even more. Like I said, this movie deserves way more recognition, man. It really, really does. I am. Now, before I leave you guys, I am going to make sure you get your fortune cookie, okay? Here it is. The only way to get there is to decide to. Do with that what you will, my friends. But until next time, be excellent, be kind, subscribe to the podcast.